You've seen them everywhere, on ancient temple walls, on dollar bills, in corporate logos, in your dreams. Circles, triangles, spirals, eyes, crosses, serpents. You've been told they're art, or coincidence, or decoration. But the truth is, symbols are not passive, they are active. They don't just represent meaning, they transmit it. They're not illustrations, they're instruments. Each one carries a frequency, a resonance, a coded vibration that bypasses your intellect and speaks directly to your subconscious. The ancients knew this. That's why they carved symbols into stone, why they painted them on tombs, pyramids, and sacred sites, not to impress, but to instruct, to activate. Because a true symbol doesn't need explanation. It reminds your soul of something it already knows. It holds a memory, a pattern, a cosmic blueprint. A circle, wholeness, infinity, unity. A triangle, manifestation, spirit descending into matter. A spiral, evolution, DNA, the rhythm of galaxies. And when you encounter these shapes, your body responds before your mind does. You feel it, not in thought, but in vibration, because symbols are frequency containers. They carry energy across time, across cultures, across dimensions, a message encoded in form, a portal disguised as a pattern. And here's what they never taught you. The entire universe is symbolic. Your reality is built on codes. Every atom, every star, every thought, it all emerges from archetypal geometry and energetic design. You weren't raised to read these codes. You were trained to ignore them. Because if you truly understood what a symbol does, you'd see the world very differently. You'd see that architecture isn't just structural, it's spiritual. That art isn't just visual, it's vibrational. That language isn't just phonetic, it's magical. And you'd begin to ask dangerous questions. Why do governments use ancient sigils in plain sight? Why do corporate logos resemble occult glyphs? Why are the same shapes seen in religious art, scientific models, and esoteric texts? Because deep down, symbols shape belief, and belief shapes reality. Those who know how to use symbols, it don't need to control you physically. They can do it energetically, silently, subconsciously, beautifully, and most of us never notice. But now, you are beginning to. You're beginning to remember that symbols are not stories of the past. They are the architecture of consciousness. And once you learn to see them, you'll never look at reality the same way again. Power has never only been enforced through weapons, armies, or laws. The most enduring control isn't physical, it's symbolic. Because those who truly rule the world don't just govern lands, they govern minds. And they do it with symbols. Throughout history, the elite priests, pharaohs, emperors, secret societies understood that if you can encode meaning into a symbol and place it everywhere, you shape perception without ever speaking a word. In ancient Egypt, the ankh wasn't just jewelry. It was the symbol of eternal life carried by gods, carved on tombs, placed in initiatory temples. The Eye of Horus wasn't just decoration, it represented spiritual perception, inner knowing, the pineal gate. In Sumer, spirals and cuneiform glyphs were not just writing, they were vibrational matrices. Each stroke was designed to carry energetic intent. In Greece, the philosopher priests of Pythagoras taught that number itself was divine. Geometry was not math, it was a sacred language of the soul. But as this sacred science spread, something shifted. Empires began to repurpose the symbols. not for illumination but for domination. Take Rome. They adopted Egyptian obelisks and placed them in the centers of their cities, not as homage, but as claim. They took the cross, once a sacred geometric key, and turned it into a tool of fear. Over time, these symbols were woven into imperial architecture, royal crests, religious relics. They appeared on cathedrals, crowns, and coins. And later, they found their way into flags, corporations, intelligence agencies, and Hollywood studios. Ever notice how the same symbols repeat? The all-seeing eye, the sun disk, the double-headed eagle, the serpent coiled around a staff, the checkered floor of Masonic lodges now mirrored in courtrooms and fashion shows. These aren't accidents. They're part of a hidden language, a code of power that stretches from ancient priesthoods to modern boardrooms. Because here's the secret. He who controls the symbol controls the story, and he who controls the story controls the world. This is why ancient knowledge was hidden, why mystery schools were silenced, why sacred geometry was called superstition, and why modern culture has been flooded with hollow symbols stripped of their soul, weaponized through repetition. Because when symbols are used unconsciously, they program us. When used consciously, they liberate us. And the difference between the two? Awareness. When you begin to see that the same signs that adorned ancient temples now decorate skyscrapers, product labels, and movie sets, you realize that we're not living in a new world. We're living in an engineered illusion built from the bones of forgotten truths. But the code is still here, buried beneath distraction, humming beneath the noise. And if you can learn to read it not with your eyes, but with your intuition, then the spell begins to break, and the power returns to you. We like to believe we make choices with logic, that we weigh facts, think critically, and then decide. But that's a lie we tell ourselves. Because the truth is, most of your choices aren't made in the mind, they're made in the subconscious. And that's exactly where symbols operate. They don't argue, they don't explain, they don't need permission. They go straight past the gatekeeper of reason and speak directly to your inner programming. The ancients knew this, and now so do the modern architects of media, politics, religion, and marketing. Because your subconscious doesn't speak in language, it speaks in images, patterns, shapes, archetypes. It recognizes the spiral, the eye, the triangle, the cross, long before your conscious mind catches up. This is why a logo can make you feel trust, desire, or fear, even if you don't know why. Why you're drawn to certain colors, certain symbols, certain brands, not because of their product, but because of the frequency they carry. This isn't magic, it's psychology. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine, and it's always trying to make sense of the world. But when it sees a symbol charged with energetic history, a symbol used for thousands of years in ritual, myth, or manipulation, it doesn't ask questions. It remembers. It reacts. It responds. It obeys. This is the hidden architecture of reality. Because while the left brain speaks in logic, the right brain, your emotional, intuitive, symbolic mind, controls 95% of your behavior. So when you're bombarded with symbols on screens, in streets, in ceremonies, you are being programmed. Not always maliciously, but almost always unconsciously. And that's where the danger lies. Because what you don't see, you don't question. What you don't question, you accept. And what you accept shapes your reality. Symbols have been used to sell wars, to sell belief systems, to sell identities. But they've also been used to heal, to awaken, to transcend. It all depends on intention and awareness. The spiral can represent evolution or entrapment. The eye can represent inner vision or surveillance. The serpent can be wisdom or control. And that's the secret. A symbol's power is in its resonance, but its meaning is in your consciousness. If you're asleep, it controls you. If you're awake, you control it. The symbol becomes a tool, a mirror, a key, and suddenly, the same images that once enslaved you begin to liberate you. Not by changing what they are, but by changing what you are when you meet them. They're all around you. You walk past them, scroll past them, wear them on your clothes, see them in films, hold them in your hand without even knowing it. Modern symbols, corporate logos, government seals, military emblems, media icons, religious insignias. But look closer, really look, and something strange happens. You start to see through them, because many of these modern symbols aren't modern at all. They're ancient, resurrected, repurposed, recharged. The all-seeing eye? You've seen it on the back of the dollar bill, floating above a pyramid. But long before it became a Masonic emblem, it was the Eye of Horus, a symbol of awakened perception, divine sight, the pineal gland, a tool for spiritual vision. The pentagram? Today it conjures fear or occultism, but in ancient times it symbolized the 5 elements: earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. It was a map of the human body, head, arms, and legs outstretched in balance with the cosmos. The obelisk in Washington, D.C., copied directly from Egypt, a stylized sun ray, a phallic symbol of divine masculine energy. But now it stands silent, disconnected from its original energetic function. Checkerboard floors in royal halls, fashion ads, music videos, they echo the Masonic symbol of duality, light and dark, order and chaos. Originally a reminder of inner integration, now a background prop for power. Even the cross stripped from its original esoteric meaning. Not a symbol of death, but of divine intersection, heaven and earth, spirit and matter, the vertical and horizontal path. But in the modern world, these symbols are no longer used to awaken. They're used to influence, to brand, to signal, to control perception. Why do you think the logos of tech giants, fashion houses, car companies all subtly mirror these ancient signs? Because whether or not you believe in the power of symbols, the people who run the world absolutely do. They don't need you to understand the symbols. They only need you to respond to them, to feel something, to trust the logo, to obey the flag, to venerate the emblem, to wear the brand without knowing what it means. Because once a symbol lodges itself into your psyche, it becomes a lens, a filter through which you see reality. And if someone else placed it there, then they've shaped not just what you see, but how you see it. That's how symbols rule us. Quietly, constantly, completely, until we learn to speak the language again. Until we stop asking, "What does this mean?" and start asking, "What does this do to my energy, to my thoughts, to my choices?" Because only then do we take our power back. Only then do we become the symbol makers again, not just the symbol wearers. Symbols don't just represent reality, they shape it. This is the forgotten science of the ancients and the most closely guarded truth of those who rule from the shadows. Because when you understand how symbols actually work, you begin to see that they aren't passive images. They're vibrational tools. Every true symbol is an archetypal pattern, a sacred geometry of energy, emotion, and intention. Used consciously, it becomes a frequency dial. Used unconsciously, it becomes a subconscious trap. Ancient mystics knew this. In every culture, on every continent, sacred symbols were carved, painted, or drawn not for decoration, but for activation. Asterisk. The yantras of India were not just beautiful, they were precise blueprints of divine energy. Each curve and line engineered to resonate with specific frequencies in the human body and mind. Asterisk sigils, in Western occultism, were not random scribbles, but encoded intentions designed to bypass the logical mind and root directly into the subconscious field, where reality begins to take form. Asterisk mandala patterns were more than arty. They were maps of the cosmos, and also mirrors of the soul, used in meditation to collapse the illusion of separation and enter divine states. You may not realize it, but you already live in a symbolic matrix. Every number, every brand, every ritual, every word, it all has energetic weight, and your attention is what powers it. This is the first law of manifestation. Energy follows awareness. So when you focus your energy through a symbol consciously, you amplify your intention. You create a resonant field that begins attracting experiences in alignment with that vibration. This is how ancient priests worked with the universe. They didn't force nature, they harmonized with it. They tuned themselves into the divine blueprint, and the blueprint was encoded in symbols. Even the structure of your DNA follows the same ratios as sacred geometry. Your breath moves in spirals. Your energy field forms a torus. Your thoughts, when focused with feeling, begin to bend probability. So when you charge a symbol with your awareness, your breath, your belief, you're not playing pretend. You're becoming a co-creator. And that's the secret the modern world has tried to bury. Symbols don't just influence behavior, they influence the very blueprint of reality. This is why governments use them. This is why secret societies keep them. This is why brands fight for them. Because the one who owns the symbol owns the spell. But here's the shift. You no longer need to be manipulated by the symbols of others. You can reclaim your own. You can create your own sigils, your own geometric codes, your own sacred language, not to control others, but to align with truth. The truth that your words, your thoughts, your symbols are not passive. They are magic. And magic, when remembered, becomes creation. They tell us ancient knowledge was lost, that sacred symbols faded with forgotten cultures, buried under dust and time. But knowledge this powerful is never truly lost. It was hidden, deliberately. Because when you understand the language of symbols, you no longer need priests, politicians, or systems to tell you who you are. You no longer ask for permission to shape your life. You stop consuming reality and start creating it. And for those who seek to rule, that is the ultimate threat. In every age, there were those who remembered the power of symbols, mystics, shamans, initiates, builders, healers. But there were also those who feared what that power could awaken in the masses, empires, religions, institutions. They didn't just conquer land, they conquered meaning. They took the serpent symbol of wisdom and kundalini and made it into a devil. They took the pentagram symbol of the balanced human and turned it into something to fear. They took the feminine spiral symbol of creation and erased it from temples, books, and language. Because when symbols are severed from their true meaning, people forget how to use them. And worse, they forget they were ever powerful to begin with. This wasn't ignorance, it was engineering. During the rise of religious orthodoxy, sacred geometry was demonized. During colonial conquest, indigenous symbols were erased. During the Industrial Revolution, logos replaced glyphs and commerce became the new cathedral. The modern world wasn't built on sacred symbols. It was built on emptied ones, stripped of meaning, hollowed out and repackaged. What remained were brands, flags, and slogans, symbols without soul. But something was left behind, in secret orders, in mystical texts, in architecture, in dreams. Because those who truly understood the power of symbols knew it would be needed again. They carved it into cathedrals. They encoded it into tarot. They passed it down through whispers, ritual, and resonance, waiting, not for scholars, but for rememberers. For those who feel truth in the presence of certain shapes, who dream in geometry, who are drawn to mandalas, sigils, eyes, spirals, without knowing why. They're not just curious, they're being activated. Because the knowledge was never destroyed. It was sealed in the only place it couldn't be taken from you, your own consciousness. And now, in this time of awakening, the seals are breaking. Not through textbooks, but through resonance. You don't need to learn the old symbols. You need to remember what they mean. And when you do, you become what they tried to suppress: a sovereign creator, a conscious being, a living symbol of light. We were never meant to just read symbols. We were meant to embody them, to move through life, not as passive receivers of meaning, but as conscious transmitters of it. Because every thought you think, every word you speak, every image you hold in your inner world creates ripples in the field of reality. And when you work with symbols intentionally, you're not practicing superstition, you're practicing alchemy. Not the kind with beakers and gold, the real kind, the transformation of consciousness. You see, the true alchemists of history didn't turn lead into metal. They turned forgetfulness into remembrance. They worked with sigils, sacred geometry, color, sound, and light, not as metaphors, but as spiritual technologies. And the greatest tool in their arsenal? The symbolic mind. This is the part of you that doesn't just think. It knows. It senses patterns. It feels meaning in shapes and forms. It understands that the world isn't just material, it's metaphysical. And here's the truth. You've always had access to it. But school didn't teach you to see in symbols. It taught you to analyze, to categorize, to dismiss the invisible. So your symbolic mind went silent, buried under logic, numbed by noise. But now it's waking up. You're beginning to see the world not just as it appears, but as it echoes. A logo isn't just a brand, it's an echo of an ancient sigil. A building isn't just architecture, it's a frequency chamber. A dream isn't just imagination, it's a symbolic download. Everything in your life speaks a language. And the moment you stop translating it only through logic, you begin to remember how to feel the code. This is where your power lives. When you place a symbol on your altar, you're placing intention into space. When you draw a sigil with focus, you're coding desire into form. When you wear a talisman, you're telling the universe, I remember who I am. This is not fantasy. It's frequency. And the more you engage with symbols from a place of awareness, the more you transform not just your inner world, but the world around you. Because symbols are seeds, and when planted in conscious soil, they bloom into new realities. This is your role now, not just to decode the old world, but to create the new one. To become the alchemist, the dreamer, the architect of meaning. You are not here to be controlled by symbols. You are here to become one, a walking mandala. a living glyph, a radiant, breathing transmission of the divine. So ask yourself now, what symbols will you carry forward? What meaning will you give your life? What vibration will you inscribe on the fabric of reality? Because you are the brush, you are the canvas, you are the code, and your story is the spell.